Hey, folks, I have an extra special treat for you today. My new friend Larry Levine is with me. The word authentic always gets overused because we love buzzwords, but this dude is legit. So much so that he has started an actual movement, which is another overused term, but he did it, called Selling from the Heart. And it's, trying to actually sell from the heart and get to know people. He's done this so much that he is an author of a book, Selling from the Heart, podcast host, Selling from the Heart. He does coaching, he does training, and my God, he has more recommendations on LinkedIn than anyone else on planet Earth. Welcome, Larry Levine.
Charles, what's going on? I got my orange on for you.
I
It's not Tennessee
know.
Vol orange, but orange is my favorite color. I'm supporting the cause.
Dude, it's dangerously close. We're hot on the recruiting trail. Just got in a grad transfer from Clemson. Also, orange is a good day.
It's I if I could wear orange every single day, I wish selling from the heart colors could be orange, but it just doesn't quite mesh with the
You'd
theme.
you'd be the only selling. You're the only selling from the heart. Period. But anybody else who came along, by God, you'd be the only orange one.
Oh boy. But that we're not here to talk about orange, are we?
No, we're here for me first and foremost to kind of get you to tell us, obviously, a little bit about selling from the heart. But the first thing I always like to do is backtrack just a little bit. Give me the Cliff Notes version of kind of who you are, and your backstory, kind of how you got to the point of where you are today.
No, this is great. But before I get there, I just want to share one thing about authenticity, and this will set the stage for our time together. We're gonna have a great conversation. Is authenticity is a lifestyle? It's not a light switch. I want everyone to key in on that for a moment as we dive into. If we're gonna have a great conversation, but I'm a big believer that you don't know somebody until you know their backstory.
Right.
Backstories tell a lot about somebody and where they've been to where they're heading to where they're at right now. I spent 28, almost 29 years in the most chaotic sales channel that I think's ever existed. I sold copiers my whole life in Los Angeles.
Ooh, that's a tough one.
From
That's the startup gig that you
dude,
stuck with forever.
it's the start. I remember this. So I graduated college in 1987, and I remember I was getting married shortly thereafter. My father said to me, "Hey son, you got to go get a job." And I was going through all the on-campus interviews, and I was making it away through the interviews, and then this would always happen. Hey, you're great. You got book smarts. Everything looks great, but you don't have the sales experience.
Nope.
Well, how am I going to go get the sales experience, right? So I remember my dad saying, "Hey, if you can sell copiers and last 1 year, you're worth your weight in gold." So keep
He's
in mind,
right.
this first full year is 1988. Do the math on that one.
Yeah.
And it was the worst year, but the best year I ever had. And I will tell you this, I made a whopping $18,000 my first year selling copiers. It was a draw against commissions. So
Sure.
do the math on that. I made $1,500 a month. And I sold a few things along the way. Great learning experience.
Sure.
I absolutely parlayed what I'd learned that first year into a very successful career selling copiers that spanned the late 80s, the 90s, the 2000s into 2010s. And what I learned that first year carried me over, and it forever changed my life. Is I remember my very first sale I made. It was probably about 4 or 5 months into my career. And I remember asking this person one question. I don't know what stirred it, but I'm a very inquisitive person. I remember asking this person, "Why did you buy from me?" Besides, we all joked
Sure.
aside, besides kidding aside, hey, it was my first sale and all that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
They said, "You did something completely different than every other salesperson we met." I go, "Interesting. Can you share?" They said, "You made it about us. You made it about our company. You made it about how you can help. And it wasn't about your products and your services and your company." Now, keep in mind, I'm in my early 20s. Why am I sharing this story with everyone? It's because the first couple months in my career, I shadowed salespeople. I watched what they were doing. I keyed in on their phone calls. I went on what we call field write-outs. In other words, I was shadowing
Oh
who was
yeah, you
supposedly
were learning how to the mirroring
I was the
technique
I
and
was the I was
labeling and
all
restating.
all of this stuff. And I'm a big believer in this. We all have five senses. We know what those five senses are. We're taught it in grade school. We have a sixth sense, and that sixth sense is what I call BS. And my BS meter was up real high as a young,
Sure.
impressionable 20-something-year-old. And I was paying attention to body language, and I was paying attention to interactions, and I was paying attention to how the bullpen was interacting with each other. I was paying attention to a really dysfunctional sales manager I had. I said, again, this could be a really rough year, because I had in the back of my head 1 year. If I can make it 1 year,
Yeah.
I'm worth my weight in gold. But here's something else: is I'm a big believer your products are your environment. Keen on this. I believe we're all products of our environment. I'm not here to talk psychology 101. We're products of our environment. Salespeople are products of their environment. And I said, hey, if I'm going to make this thing work and I'm going to make my parents proud of me, I have to do something different, because I wasn't liking what I was seeing on the sales team I was at. And I share this because I learned from that very first conversation that I was pouring in how much that I cared about them. I was making it about them, their company. The byproduct was the products and the services and everything that I had. I'm just very inquisitive, but I'm a product of how I was raised. And I share this because this is what brought me to where I'm at today. Is I had a highly relational mom, and I had a rocket scientist for a father. My dad was literally a rocket scientist for the United States Air Force.
Whoa.
And so I had on one side, I had a highly relational mother. I had a brainiac for a father. I wasn't book smart. I was book stupid.
Right.
But I was highly relationally smart. But what I did is I said, you know what? I'm going to take both of these. I'm going to compress them together. I'm going to bring them to sales. I brought high emotion, high relation to sales, but I brought a plan. I brought preparation, and I brought practice, because that's what was instilled in me by my father. I smashed that together. It carried me through a very successful career in the copier channel until the spring of 2015. The spring of 2015, I found myself without a job at 50 years old. And I had to figure out what to do next. And I could have ridden off into a very complacent sunset. I could have went to another position inside the copier channel and would have made a very good living. My wife told me, you would have been 6 months into this, you would have been bored. You need to go find something else to do. I didn't know what something else was.
Sure.
Until I reached out to a near and dear friend of mine. And that near and dear friend of mine is now my business partner and my co-host of my podcast. That's Daryl Amy. Picked up the phone. I wanted to tap his network. I wanted to tap his network of who did he know who knew somebody who knew somebody. And, can I have a conversation? I'm looking for a job. And I kind of poured my soul to Daryl. Now, Daryl and I are tight friends. We've known each other for decades, and he knew my style. About a week later, he calls me on the phone and he says, hey, Larry, you don't need to go back into the sales world. You need to coach and teach salespeople on what you did in the most competitive dog-eat-dog channel there is, the copier channel. You need to coach and teach salespeople on how to do this. And I doubled down on myself. My wife gave me a blessing. I have a great support mechanism. And I started this whole thing from scratch. Not a single client. No one outside of Southern California in the LA market knew who I was. But I'm a big believer words matter and message matters. I took my whole mess from the copier channel. I took decades upon decades of all the mess, all the chaos that was in there. I turned it into my message. And here we are 7.5 years later. And I've turned this into a movement. The Selling from the Heart podcast is helping salespeople and sales leaders all over the world. I had no idea when I wrote Selling from the Heart if I'd sell 5 books, 500 books. All I'm bringing to the surface is what I believe in my heart is the way we as sales professionals and leaders need to carry ourselves. We need to be genuine. We need to be authentic. We need to be sincere. We call it giving a rip. We need to give a rip about our profession and our clients and help them do better business. That's selling from the heart.
So when you're starting there in 2015, do you write the book first? Do you go sell the training first? What's happening?
Well, I will tell you this. For the first couple of years, and I'm not going to hold back at all, I will tell you this. The first couple of years was a roller coaster. Anyone who goes into entrepreneurship, y'all know where I'm going with this.
Right.
It's a roller coaster. And if somebody doesn't tell you it's a roller coaster, they're full of you know what.
Right.
And what I did was I'd spent my whole entire career in the copier channel. So what I did is I went right back to the niche market that I knew. And that was the copier channel. I started speaking and sharing stories and so forth, which led to coaching and training opportunities. I went back to the people that I knew. Here's what I uncovered. A prophet's not welcome in their own backyard. Let that one sink in
Dude,
for a
I
moment.
have said that 1,000 times over. The definition of an expert is somebody 50 miles out of town. There's no profit in his hometown. Insert,
Yeah.
what do you call it? Contempt by, either way. Yeah,
But
you're right on the money.
I totally get where you're going with this.
Yeah,
I bring this up for a reason because I was pouring my heart and my soul into coaching and training a channel that wasn't accepting the message.
right. I get that.
And I was like, I was traveling between the United States, I was traveling into Canada, and I was traveling into Australia because I was leveraging my photocopier, my office technology connections. I was working with
Wow.
manufacturers and I was working with direct teams and indirect teams in the channel. But here we are. I'm going to fast forward. We're in the spring of 2017. So we're into this a year and a half, a couple years, and literally I'm inches away from hanging it up. Literally.
Sure.
I was crying on my wife's shoulder because I felt I was letting her down because let's just face it. I didn't have a Brinks truck to fund my lifestyle. I want everyone to think about that. When you go into entrepreneurship, I mean, you're either in or you're out. There's not dipping the toe in the water. I went full bore. I put 50-pound lead weights on my ankles and dove into the deep blue ocean. And I just wasn't, I was burned out. I wasn't making the money I was used to. Not that making money's everything, but it sure makes your lifestyle a little bit easier when you're
I've
going through
told a
peaks and
lot of
valleys.
people, yeah, making money can't necessarily make you happy, but not having money sure as hell can make you sad.
Absolute 100% totally spot on. Agree with that. And I had shared this with Daryl. In fact, I was crying on Daryl's shoulders while I said, hey, I'm letting a lot of people down. I lost my manhood. Dude, I am coming clean with this. I'm coming
You
clean
are.
because people need to hear this because it's the real world. It goes through entrepreneurs' heads, whether you're male or female. And I said, hey, Daryl, hey, listen, I don't know if I can do this anymore. I really don't. And he goes, hey, we've been friends for a long time. I'll support you on whatever you want to do. But look how far you've come. And I just kept, I didn't want to let my wife down. I didn't want to let my friends down. I didn't want to let my parents down because they knew I was going down entrepreneurship. I just carried this burden internally. And I share this because I said, hey, listen, Daryl, we need to get this message out to a broader audience. Now, keep in mind, I was solely focused in on the only channel that I knew, and
Yeah.
that was the copier channel. So I said, I remember exactly where I was at the time that I looked Daryl in the eye and I said, Daryl, let's start a podcast. And he goes, no way, we are not starting a podcast. No way. And I said, hey, listen, we're going to start a podcast. It might be a really good way to get our message out to a broader audience. And he goes, I'm condensing the conversation for the purpose of the podcast. And I remember Daryl saying this. He goes, Larry, he goes, I'll start a podcast with you only under one condition. And that one condition is you got to come up with a really freaking cool name for this podcast or you're flying solo. I didn't want to fly solo. I didn't want to be a solo podcast person. I go, Daryl, you and I are in this together. This is what we're going to call it. We're going to call this thing Selling from the Heart. And he goes, dude, where the heck did you pull that one out of? Because that's pure genius.
Sure.
And I said, hey, that's how I carried myself. I'm highly relational. I'm a highly emotional guy. I care about everybody. I walk with integrity. I'm never going to waver from my authenticity. This is what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about bringing heart, sincerity, deep business substance into the sales world. And in the spring of 2017, we start the Selling from the Heart podcast. And if you all go back to the very first podcast, you're going to laugh, but we've come a long way.
I think that's everybody's podcast.
It's
It's like watching the pilot episode of Seinfeld and you realize, man, this isn't that good.
It's but what we learned along the way is we have direct, heartfelt conversation with like-minded thought leaders, salespeople, sales leaders, influential people in the marketplace who understand that authenticity matters. And we brought that to the forefront. And in 2018, I launched the book, Selling from the Heart, How Your Authentic Self Sells You. I had no idea if 5 books would sell or 100 books would sell. All I know is in the span of 2 to 3 years now, my life's turned upside down 5 times over. We've built a major movement around heart in the sales profession worldwide. And I say this because it's time that the sales profession and sales leaders stand up and rise up and say, no more empty suits. We can all do better, especially where trust and credibility is at anemically low levels.
Did the podcast and the book help supercharge or get you back on track?
Um, Here's what was interesting. The podcast came out first.
Right.
And it was just a way to start getting the messaging out there. And what was really interesting, our podcast took off when we asked our signature question, what's it mean to you to sell from the heart? And we've built a whole library of what it means to sell from the heart from all of our guests.
Yeah.
Well, I remember I really hold my inner circle very close to me. I guard my inner circle and I cherish my inner circle. And I remember a near and dear friend of mine, and I still remember this as plain as day. His name's Mark Hunter, the sales hunter. He wrote High Profit Prospecting and a Mind for Sales. I remember it was a couple days after my book came out, and he goes, Larry, I'm going to give you some advice. And this would have been the fall of 2018. He goes, turn your book into a business. Turn your book into a business. Now, I am not afraid, none whatsoever, to try new things. And I go, I think I get where you're going. Daryl and I doubled down on this. We started building out coaching and training around every chapter, Selling from the Heart. And we just started to market it. I write once a week. We talked about it on our podcast. We drove the message out on social. We drove it on outbound prospecting. And all of a sudden we started to do workshops and we started to get the message out there around Selling from the Heart. Both the book, I was doing team reads, I was doing workshops and all that. And then, the pandemic hits and then we had to pivot again. And we just went back to the drawing board and we sat in a room for a day and we both came up with, what does Selling from the Heart really do? And I said, Selling from the Heart really helps salespeople and sales leaders and their teams build trust and credibility in a world where it's sorely lacking. And then we put together coaching and training around how to build authentic relationships, how to build authentic client relationships, how to leverage Selling from the Heart prospecting, how to leverage this throughout the whole entire sales process. And we don't waver from our message. And it's just been a roller coaster of just great times.
Yeah.
We're working with some really cool companies, highly recognizable companies. What we do works. I sincerely, and I'm meaning this, I sincerely believe this from the bottom of my heart, that soft skills yield hard dollars. We're in a people business. We're in a relationship-driven business. Sales leaders and sales professionals must understand what it means to build authentic relationships and combine that with meaningful business value. When we can start doing that, you start elevating trust, not only with your prospects, but with your clients. And that's what matters. That's what we're all about at Selling from the Heart.
So talking about the inbound stuff makes a lot of sense there. You're doing podcasts, people are finding you on social media avenues or reading your book. You mentioned also doing that outbound prospecting, which people find difficult to be authentic with, and you guys obviously have done it well. So when you're doing that outbound prospecting for Selling from the Heart, or you're even teaching it, what does that look like?
Well, see, here's what's interesting, and I'm going to layer a couple things in here, and then I'm going to share with you how I roll out my calls, and it works for me. I'll give you all the framework for it.
Sure,
this absolutely works, but I will tell you this. It's rare that I have to explain to anybody what Selling from the Heart means. And I'm not saying that to be braggadocious or anything like that. I'm just keeping it real. If y'all don't understand what Selling from the Heart is, and y'all been under a rock for a very long time, and I'm being professionally direct with this, is I'm a big believer in bringing this back to the sales profession. Selling from the Heart, people self-select themselves in. It's rare that I have to convince somebody why you need to sell from the heart.
Right.
And I share this because when I open up phone calls with people, and yes, I am prospecting, I'm calling into sales leadership. I'm calling into sales management. And when I get somebody to answer a phone call, or I send them an email that they respond back to that leads to a phone call, I'm sharing messaging just like this. And I'll roll this out. You don't have to respond back, Charles, but I'm going to give everyone the framework to this.
Do it.
Is, Charles, you're a VP of sales, and I'll get you on the phone, and I'll just say something. Hey, Charles, it's Larry Levine over at Selling from the Heart. In the last 90 days, in the last 6 months, and working with people just like you, here are the 3 issues that we've been working on with their salespeople. how to improve client retention, how to grow new business, and how to open up conversations with those executive level decision makers. Hey, Charles, I'm just curious, out of those three, which one needs improvement on with your sales team? And then I just stop and I don't say a word. And then Charles is going to say,
Oh, I'm supposed to answer. So
no,
sorry.
I know, no, dude, don't worry about it. I'm just giving everyone the framework.
Gotcha.
But why am I sharing this? Outbound prospecting works. People will pick up the phone. It's what are you going to say when they answer? And here's where salespeople struggle. Salespeople are lacking confidence. They're lacking believability in themselves and their messaging, and they have low self-worth. This is why at Selling from the Heart, we help salespeople by working on themselves first. When they can start gaining confidence, when they can start gaining believability in themselves and their messaging, and we increase their self-worth, they just start standing taller. Their messaging becomes a lot clearer. Their confidence starts to increase, and they have no issues in doing some of this. This is why we're a big believer, and why I wrote the book the way I did, is the inner work that salespeople do. Whether you're a sales professional or sales leader, the inner work that you do to your heart, it's the hardest thing you're going to do, but it's the most rewarding. And if you all can do this, watch what happens to the outer layers of success. And I say this because I've walked through it. I've seen sales leaders and salespeople walk through it. We all have issues, right? Lord knows I have them. We all have them. But here's what happens is when we throw those in the closet and we don't address them, it wreaks havoc on our professional lives. I'm just here to tell you that if we can work on the inner part of who we are, if we can find that inner journey to who we are, if we can get comfortable with it, and I'm comfortable with it, watch what starts happening to the success. Watch what starts happening to your confidence and the believability. This is what Selling from the Heart's all about.
So you guys are doing your primary model now. Is it one-on-one coaching? Is it more training? Is it a combination?
Yeah, I do. I do a lot of keynote speaking, but what really lights my fire and what lights our fire here at Selling from the Heart is working with sales leaders and sales teams on how to build trust and credibility to grow themselves, grow their client relationships, and grow sales. And it's around 4 key things in our coaching and training. It's all around building authentic relationships and combining that with meaningful value. The accelerators to this are inspirational experiences and disciplined habits. We take sales leaders and sales teams on a journey on how to really build authentic relationships and combine that with meaningful value. If you can do both those things, you'll start building trust and credibility. I'm all about creating the experiences. I believe that salespeople and sales leaders can control what they can control, and that's how they show up to their clients and their future clients. It's about the inspirational experiences they leave. It's about inspiring and influencing business owners, VPs of sales, businesses to see and achieve the things they didn't think was possible. Create the inspiration and influence around this and bring disciplined habits to the forefront.
Larry, friend, you have been very generous with your time. You've given all types of little nuggets there. A lot of the folks that I get a chance to work with, whether it's on the video side as financial advisors, insurance agents, business coaches, or even doing the small business coaching for small business owners, entrepreneurs like you're talking about. There's a ton of good nuggets in there. So let's do a quick transition as we're coming to the end here. Other than your book, what is a book that you recommend that you've either read lately or you read a long time ago that you think any of those folks need to be reading?
I'll tell you one book that has rocked my world like none other. The book's called 3 Feet from Gold. Ooh. It's written by Greg Reed and Sharon Lechter. I will tell you this book has I've read it twice, cover to cover, both times, one sitting, couldn't put the book down. This is the modern day version of Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. I'm going to take everyone on a quick journey. Think and Grow Rich was written, back in the early 1930s by Dr. Napoleon Hill. And It took people on a journey. Law of success, science of success, and all
Yep.
that came out afterwards. Well, I'm a firm believer things happen for a reason, really weird reason. Just really quick, do I have the remaining
Sure.
time? Just
Go
a
ahead.
quick
Yeah. Yeah.
story on this. Is about 5-6 months ago, I had a LinkedIn connection reach out to me out of the blue. Says, hey, this person said, I've been following your journey. I'm just curious if we can hop on a call. I'd like to know more. For our time's sake, I'm going to condense it all the way to 3 feet from gold. At the end of our conversation, this person said, you know what? I'm going to share some advice with you because I poured my soul out to this person in 45 minutes. I'm an open
This is the
book.
person that cold reached out to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm going to tell you, I'm an open book. All you got to do is ask. I will tell. And I got nothing to hide, nothing to hide, because that's just who I am. And this person said, listen, I'm going to share some advice with you. It's the same thing a mentor shared with me. Read 3 Feet from Gold. Just read the book. When you're done, call me. It took me a week to order the book.
Sure.
But I read it cover to cover. And I go, holy crap. This is gold. No play on 3 Feet from Gold.
Sure.
I reached out since. I've had conversations with Greg Reed. I'm scheduling to come on the Selling from the Heart podcast. This is the modern day Think and Grow Rich. This book is pure gold. It has rocked my world so much that now I'm going on a deep journey into Napoleon Hill books. I'm going deep, which has had me reading stuff from Andrew Carnegie.
Yeah.
And the Rockefellers.
Earl Nightingale.
All of this stuff.
Yeah.
Jim Rohn. I'm a firm believer, people, that what's forever old is forever new. All the great ones out there are still great. Their messages from 100 years ago and 80 years ago are as relevant today as they ever were right now.
They're more relevant now than they were back then.
Oh!
The big topics that were always, people are nervous and they're reading the paper too much and they're listening to the radio and they're drifting and they're doing this and that. And that's pre, all of this.
Yeah. And I will tell you this is mindset work. Yeah. I remember a recent book that's rocked my world as well as Mental Dynamite. The whole book is the conversation between Napoleon Hill and Andrew Carnegie. This is what sent Napoleon Hill on his journey. So really quick, this book was written in 1908. The conversation took place in 1908, though the book was just recently put together about a few years ago. And what was really interesting about it is Andrew Carnegie challenged Napoleon Hill before he was Dr. Napoleon Hill. He was just a poor newspaper writer. He said, hey, listen, right? He goes, I'm tasking you. It's totally up to you. Because he had interviewed Andrew Carnegie and asked him what made him so successful. And he goes, basically, if you don't believe me, there's 20 other people out there I'd like for you to meet. And you can start asking them the same questions. I'm condensing all of this, paraphrasing a lot of it. But Andrew Carnegie commissioned Napoleon Hill to go interview. I mean, he interviewed the Rockefellers and the Fords and the Einsteins of the world. And from what he learned from them, he flipped into writing Think and Grow Rich. Mental Dynamite, that conversation sent Napoleon Hill on his journey. I'm sharing all this because these are the books that I believe salespeople and sales leaders should be reading. There is so much gold from 80 to 100 years ago that they made the great ones successful. What prevents us from doing the same thing?
Absolutely. And I'm sure you've already read this, and I've mentioned it 2 or 3 times on this video series, but Interviewing the Devil is one of my favorites. And
it's on my list to read.
Dude, bump it up and don't read it, listen to it, because the dude does the devil voice. It's awesome.
Oh, but here's the thing, and to listen to Napoleon Hill, it takes a lot because he's got a voice like none other.
He's not doing it, thank God.
Okay, good. Okay.
No, Napoleon Hill is like listening to the old black and white video of the horse race. And down comes down. That's on the lead. No, I hear you, dude. No, it's not him. It's professional voiceover actors, and it's awesome. Larry, how can somebody get in touch with you, friend?
Dude, I tell you, if you can get in touch with me, you can find me all over LinkedIn. But if you want to find out what we're up to, just follow us on our podcast, Selling from the Heart. You can find it at sellingfromtheheart.net. or you can watch us on YouTube, Selling from the Heart, and we're all over social media, whether that be Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook.
Use your Google, people. Larry, I appreciate the time today. Love this shirt. And you have a good afternoon.
My pleasure. Look forward to our next conversation.
All right, bud.